Are you guys totally self-contained in Rogers Place? Like, is that practice facility, offices, everything? You don't have to move?
Yeah, which is a huge advantage.
I bet, yeah.
Obviously, yeah, with the ability to stay in your own building, we think we have the nicest facility in the NHL, and it's uh, it's really positive that you don't never have to leave your room.
You know what? I've had talked to a few coaches that have said like it's so nice it might be almost too nice.
Yeah, well, it
It's
is.
pretty.
It's
I've never been
it's
up. I got
pretty
to get out
nice,
there.
but I don't know about too nice. It's so nice that we want to give our players everything they need to compete and do it in a nice facility. I think if there's any complaint is that the square footage is so much that sometimes guys, it's tough to find guys sometimes. You know what I mean? Just because the facility is so big. So if there is anyone that could knock it, maybe they could say it's got a ton of square footage, but we try and use it wisely, and I never have any trouble finding anybody.
Um, like I always wonder, like when players like from not even that long ago, like guys that would have retired say 20 years ago, like they must walk into your facility or some of these new facilities and their mind just gets blown away. Like what's next? Because there's always something like what's next? Like what's the next thing we're going to see? And like we've got like hot tubs, cold tubs, kitchens. What's the next thing we're going to see in hockey locker rooms?
Good question. I think a lot of time and energy is being spent on recovery and making sure your athletes are recovering in the right way. And I thought the people that designed our space here were very smart. I think the people that took the lead were Kevin Lowe and a former equipment manager Barry Stafford. That they canvassed every arena in the NHL and went and took good ideas from every organization and how they set up their own space. And we're talking recovery a little bit earlier. We have one of those underwater treadmills, for players that are injured and can't bear body weight unless they're in water. There's things on the strength and conditioning side, which seems like there's new machines and contraptions that come
Yeah.
out every few months, and our guys are right on it, and they have enough space in order to accomplish what they need to accomplish. One of the things we have in our space here in Edmonton that I think our players really enjoy is the ability to shoot pucks in a private, contained shooting room, but that shooting room's within the dressing room.
So
So
like a
players don't
batting
have.
cage in baseball, kind of like.
Yeah, exactly.
No
Yeah,
way.
exactly. It has a little surface and real boards and real net and everything they could need to work on their shot. But for me, in the end, what it comes down to is, like I said, it's about making sure that your players want to be at this space. So we treat them right, and we're fortunate that comes from the very top here that we give our players the tools they need to be successful, and we take a lot of pride in not only our facility but all of our resources.
So let's imagine it's like it's after hours, say in training camp, the coaching staff's hanging out doing video, and you guys decide you're gonna go into the shooting room, and maybe there's a little money at stake. Which coach on your coaching staff is winning that pot?
Oh well, that hasn't happened, but you know what we have a couple former NHL D men that have big shots or were known for their big shot, but actually the hardest shot in our coach's room belongs to our goalie coach, Dustin Schwartz.
No
You
way.
know, yeah, well, he spends a lot of time shooting on goalies, right? So
Fair
he's
enough.
got
Yeah.
yeah, and he's a pretty good athlete, and he takes a lot of pride in his one timer. And the joke around here is that he has one of the hardest shots in the entire organization, player or coach.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Jay, you mentioned, recovery. That's such a big part of today's game and just the grind that's an NHL season. How do you recover from one season to the next to make sure that when you show up, you're ready to roll?
Yeah, well, usually when you go through an 82 game schedule, and then the emotion and the time and energy and um, commitment that goes along with a deep playoff run, your cup is empty at the end of all of that. So it's important to find ways to fill your cup. And it's hard to pour from an empty cup. So you want to make sure that you are taking the time required to mentally, physically, and emotionally renew. For me, my wife and I years ago decided to purchase a family cottage, and so we bought a cottage up in Halliburton, Ontario, and it was a place that we decided, given the crazy business that we're in, that this would be our center. It would be the center of our universe, the center of our family. It was somewhere that, given the nature of the business we're in, where you never know where you're going to be, we wanted to know where we would be every summertime. So, as much as it is a physical place, it's a mindset too.
Yeah,
When we bought that cottage, we were buying a mindset. As what I love about it is that, I love it for certain reasons. My wife loves it for some other different types of reasons. And then as our family grew and we have two kids, you know what, my kids love it for different reasons, and it just becomes part of our story as a family. And as I said, you're buying a mindset and you're creating lifelong family memories. And for me, that's where I go to fill my cup.
that's awesome. And I imagine how big a role does fishing play in refilling your
Oh,
cup?
yeah. You know what? I used to love to fish when I was younger, and then kind of got away from it with all, as you get older and you're training and you don't spend as much time. But for me, I really like fishing and have had a second act with fishing ever since we got the cottage. Have a nice boat and spend a lot of time on the water. I think for me, there's a lot of cross parallels between fishing and coaching, and it's a way for me to relax. I like to golf too, but if I had a choice, I would spend a lot more time on the water fishing. And it's those type of activities that I think help you take your mind off the day-to-day demands of being a head coach in the National Hockey League. And so I spend a lot of time on the water. I spend a lot of time with my kids. Read as much as I can, listen to as many learned people as I can. And I find that for me, a lot of the preparation work or things that I draw upon during the season gets done in the summertime.
Obviously, fishing requires a lot of patience. And when you first rejoined the Oilers as the head coach, I believe it was Derek Ryan mentioned that one of the benefits that you brought to the table is that you didn't get rattled when the team would give up leads, and that you maintain some composure. Is there some parallels there that in terms of like just high performance requiring that patience and maintaining an even keel?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously with fishing, you got to. There's a reason it's called fishing and not catching. Where, it doesn't mean just because you set the hook correctly or you go to the right spot on the lake that you're guaranteed anything. Sometimes it's about being patient. Sometimes it's adjusting things here or there. And I think as a coach, you want to display and model a level of patience, a level of calmness when things aren't going your way, because I think your team feeds off that. So for me, I'm pleased. That's the first time I heard that. I'm pleased to hear that. But I think patience can also come in the form of player development too, and understanding that players usually improve if given the right amount of attention and direction. You mentioned Derek Ryan. I was quite pleased that he had one of his best years last year at the age of 35.
Unbelievable.
Um, yeah, so player development doesn't just have to be for the 18 and 19 and 20-year-olds. Anyone that's in the NHL is usually a driven, high performer, someone who takes a lot of pride in being the best that they can be. I think coaches would be remiss if they wrote people off as they turned the corner at 30, because if you're patient with them and you work things the right way, I think great things can happen. And as I said, for Derek at that age, I think he had a career year.
You also mentioned books and taking time to catch up on reading. What would have been on your nightstand for the past few months?
Well, you know what? Sometimes it's fiction. Sometimes it's autobiographical. Sometimes it's business oriented. I'm over the last few years, as I get a little bit older, I spend probably more time reading about different figures in history. Usually it's people that have achieved some level of stature in their profession. This year I spent a lot of time reading, about different types of coaches and how they overcame certain things and whatnot. And, this summer I actually reread a book that I read as a young man, probably 15, 16 years old. I read a book because I was a huge fan of the LA Lakers at the time. I was a big fan of the Showtime way
Yeah.
of playing basketball, and a big fan of Pat Riley. And obviously now there's a television show based on some of his work and his, what he was talking about. And so I actually spent a little bit of time, rereading that book. And I tell you what, I know it was written about a 1980s basketball team, but some of the things that they had to overcome, I thought were apropos for any coach in today's age too.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, when camp kicks off here, so I think it's probably a fair assumption that the expectations for the Edmonton Oilers haven't changed compared to last year, or even the year before that. But as the head coach, how do you frame this season or spin it so that this year, despite the vision being the same, that it has a history and life of its own?
Yeah, I think we're at a special time in the history of our franchise. Obviously, this new generation of Oilers over the last 5, 6, 7 years has been knocking on the door and has a lot of really exciting talent. Over the last 2 years specifically, the team has played 28 playoff games, 28, 30 playoff games. We've been right there.
Yeah.
But we feel we're knocking on the door. But as a coach, I realized that we got to prepare to run this marathon all over again.
Yeah.
And you don't just pick up where you left off. So for me, I spend a lot of time talking about process, talking about taking care of the things that are within our immediate control, not losing the big picture, not having a big goal in mind. I'm not saying that you don't lose that, but I spend more time talking about what's immediately in front of each person in our organization. And the way I see it is we have two things to take care of. The first one is you got to take care of your day. You got to maximize your day in whatever your personal requirements are
Love
and
that.
whatever the team requirements are. So for me, I think if you do that, usually things take care of themselves. So number one would be the day. Number two is to make sure that we're taking care of the standard. And, I think we're a team specifically that plays for a proud city. We're in a proud organization. We don't have to reestablish any type of standard. This organization's been around for a long time. It has 5 trophies that sit in our locker room here. We just want, as this new group of young Oilers, or this generation of Oilers, we want to add to that legacy. So the way you add to it is by making sure that you're living up to a certain type of standard every day. So those would be the 2 things that we spend a lot of time talking about, is taking care of your day and taking care of the standard.
I just want to go back. I think that's such a great comment that, a lot, allowing players to focus on taking care of their day. And I think that that's something where, I think as maybe say a casual fan, it's easy to look at players when they come up through junior and just assume that players are going to naturally make that jump. And, maybe we forget that these are human beings that are living a life. They're moving away from home. They're dealing with a whole host of things that need to be, managed in addition to their performance on the ice. Just given you're 18 years in the National Hockey League, how important is that part of it in terms of ensuring that players are set up for success both on and off the ice, and just coaching them on how to, not assuming they're going to figure that out, that, they probably need support in that area as well.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think for me, sometimes a player's day includes going on the ice for practice. Sometimes it's a pregame skate and a game that day. Sometimes it's a rest or recovery day, and we just want to maximize that. Like you said, we're coaching human beings here first, and they have different types of pressures, perspectives, different types of realities. But I think the more focused that person can be in taking care of what's being asked of them in that day, not only by the team or the organization, but by their family, I think the better it is for everybody. So boiling it down to that common denominator, that lowest common denominator of, hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. We don't have to worry about April, June, and May right now. Let's make sure that we're taking care of what's immediately in front of us, which is the day. Let's take some joy in the journey. It's not always going to go perfectly. But if we can have that mindset, I think you end up stacking good days on top of good days on top of good days. And in the end, results take care of themselves.
Yeah, you compound. No, I think that's just really great insight. And I know our organization, for example, and I know there's players on your roster, like their kids are going to school for the first time. This is a big week, like that's, you gotta pay attention to that stuff and be present. At your season-ending press conference last year, you talked about, one of the things that you've learned along your coaching journey is to repurpose disappointment. And in your league, there's 31 teams that are disappointed. What did that process look like for you and your staff in the off season? Do you dive right into that, or is it beneficial to maybe step back for a little bit and allow the emotion to rinse off, and then jump back into that dissection of the previous season?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you two stories with that. First is at the end of our year, our Hall of Fame general manager, Ken Holland, who's just unbelievable at his job. Just what a treat for a young head coach to get his first opportunity to work alongside someone of his caliber. Someone I've worked with in the past, ironically.
Yeah.
So for us to work together, I think, I'm a very fortunate young coach. But he came in and he gave an unbelievable post year meeting with the players. Unbelievable. Hairs on everyone's neck were standing up. Everyone wanted to put their skates on and go back out and play. After that speech, so inspiring. But after that, him and I had numerous chats, and we were talking. I said, there was a dynamite speech, dynamite direction, setting a course for the summertime for everyone within the organization. But we were talking about how the feeling we all had after it was easy to feel that way at that time. The
Yeah.
real test will come, for our players in the summertime when maybe friends want to take you out golfing or go on a trip, and instead you have to dig in and work maybe a little bit longer at the gym. Or it might come in the middle of November when you're in the dog days of a season, it's cold out, and you're on the fourth game of a 4-game road trip, and you just want to get home and see your family. That's the time that you have to dig in and really, really use the messages that Ken gave the group, at that time. Now, you asked about, that comment of repurposing disappointment. For me, I've been around long enough to understand that there are no guarantees. Things happen. Things happen in playoff series. You can do a ton of great things and still find yourself on the wrong side of things sometimes in terms of the wins and losses. So for us, after that meeting from Ken, we took a little bit of time. We wanted to make sure when we were reviewing things, it was with a sober mindset, not an emotional mindset, a sober mindset. We wanted to dive deeper than just surface level.
Yeah.
And we wanted to really dig into we felt were things we've done well, were things where we can improve. We spent that time, and it was probably a good 6-week window, spent that time studying, going to work. So the
Mm.
season ended, but that didn't mean the coaches weren't working. So we spent a lot of time on trying to address what we've done well, areas that we want to improve, having an understanding of what's happening around the league. And I'm fortunate. I'm surrounded by some great people here, and we communicate well. We have a lot of even if we're not around each other, we have meetings like this over Zoom where we talk and stay connected to each other. And by the end of the summer, we get together and we have our coaches meetings to set up training camp and the next season.
With that process, so the narrative around the Oilers for several years, has been that the team needs to learn how to defend. And what I found interesting is, coming out of last season and just in, preparing for this conversation, it seemed like all of a sudden the offseason narrative was like there was all these concerns about the team's offense, just given the, particularly the lack of production 5-on-5 against Vegas. But you look at the box scores. And it's like, game 6, for example, you almost outshoot Vegas 2-1. It's not, not for lack of getting pucks to the net or generating scoring chances. Sometimes other teams play well or goalies play well. How do you guard against overcorrecting when you're going through that analysis and ensuring that the areas that you might try and tweak, they're tweaks and maybe not trying to look for wholesale changes or trying to fix something that's not necessarily broken?
Well, that's all part of that process, right? So you want to make sure that the things that are part of your organizational DNA, the things that you hold dear as players and coaches, the things that we've worked so very hard to ingrain in our team, you keep.
Yeah.
And then you look at other areas where you can improve. So when Dave Manson and I came up from the American League a year and a half ago, there was an area of the game that we wanted to improve, and that was the organization on the way back to your own zone. And we spent a lot of time on that. That is something we hold dear, and we continue to do that well last season and into the playoffs. It's part of the reason the team has had some of the success is that the players bought into this work ethic driven way to work back to their own end. Heading into last year, I heard a lot about us being a kind of a one-dimensional offensive team, an off the rush or a power play only team. We spent a lot of time working on different types of offense. And all of a sudden, now you see the Oilers being one of the top forechecking teams in the league, or the Oilers being a pretty good cycle team. They have the ability to grind people down and spend time in the offensive zone. And, I think last year we had 11 double digit goal scorers up front.
Yeah.
And then when we traded for Nick Bukestad, we had 12 double digit goal scorers up front. So, we take pride in that. And then now, if you look at it like, we call it in the coach's room, and it's like an onion. You're looking at an onion, and, if the first year was about the organization back to the end, well, last year we added that layer of not just being a one-dimensional offensive team. There are new layers that we're looking to add. I'm not going to share them here,
Yeah, that's okay.
but there's new layers that we want to add to our team game, and we think, if we do that, if we have that mindset to continually improve, to look at areas that we can get better at and add to our game, we think the other parts of our game are so strong. As long as we keep doing them and we're prepared to work at it, we think we're taking steps in the right direction.
So, with that in mind, I want to go back to when you first joined the Oilers, and it was, Tyson Barrie was quoted as saying that, one of the things that he felt that you did that was really effective is when you joined the team, you didn't try and address all facets of the game at once, that you sort of took one piece at a time, focused on it, got it to, I don't know, I guess maybe a standard or level you're happy with, and then you moved on to the next piece. And I that struck me as, particularly given an NHL schedule, the lack of practice time that you have, and with your players, that was really a novel approach. So as you look at training camp coming up, how do you teach efficiently? Is it a similar approach, or does the fact that you now have a full season or runway ahead of you, does that maybe change how you implement some of these layers into your team?
Yeah, what Tyson was referring to there is that emphasis on that organization back to our own
Yeah.
end. So, for me as a young person going into his first opportunity, and I didn't really focus on what to do until the door closed on the plane for me to go up to Edmonton, because at the time I was coaching my own team in the American League. So,
Yeah.
but I had some film, and I had 3 hours between California and Edmonton, and did a little work, but
Oh
of
man.
where I felt the team needed something addressed. And for me, I've gotten advice over time, and just through experience, I felt that if I would have came in and said, okay, we got to fix this, and this, I thought the message would have been lost. It would have been scattered. And I wanted to be ultra focused and give our players something that they could hang their hat on immediately. And it didn't mean we were going to be perfect. But if we could fix this one little piece of the game, that we do a lot of other things very well, that I thought it would help our team, and that was something that I'm glad that we took that approach, because the players really bought into it. And once, as you said, it got to a standard or a level that we felt it became a staple in our game, then we could talk about some other things. I think when you go into training camp, though, that's a different situation, because what you're
Yeah.
doing is you're laying the foundation for an entire season. You're setting a direction, you're setting a course, and you can't just pick one part of the game. But for
Yeah.
us, I think where we're at in the lifestyle or life stage of our team is that, there's parts of a game, the way we see the game, that maybe we don't need to spend as long of time on, because we want to address this new layer or two that we want to add to our game. So we'll spend time on what we feel is most important. And I think for all the coaches that are listening to this or watching this, I think that's the one thing as a message I would put out there is that the coaching staff defines what's most important, and they direct attention to certain areas. So for us, we're not going to neglect any area, but we might spend more time in these new layers that we would like to add so that everybody is focused and on the same page, while at the same time, not forgetting who we are, not forgetting what makes us who we are. The team has been in the position it's been in these last 2 years because the team does a lot of good things well. We don't want to take away from that. We just want to supplement it or add to it.
That's so interesting. I know, like when I was, heard that quote from Tyson Berry and kind of thought on it. This summer, I read the book Essentialism by Greg McCowan, and it really just struck me. And I just, even whether it was in my day to day work or looking at coaches, is just the value in being focused on less and in terms of gaining more. I think anybody that's cross paths with you, be it players, other coaches, speaks to your attention to detail. And I think it's unique in our game today. I mean, just with analytics and the amount of information that you have to process just because it's there. There's just not enough hours in the day to focus on all the details. How do you select the details that are going to matter to you, your coaching staff, and your hockey team?
Yeah, very good question. Sometimes it's like trying to find a needle in a stack of needles, that
That's
little
great.
nugget of information. But I think one thing I've learned over time, and I've had some really good teachers. But one thing I've learned over time is the ability to self-edit, the
Yeah.
ability to distill things down, the experience of how different people learn in different ways, and trying, when I address the group as a whole, to make sure that I'm talking to the person who is at the highest level of understanding, while not losing the person who might not be at that level. So trying to figure that out, trying to assign import to what I feel is critical. That comes from experience. Or that confidence in doing that comes from the amount of preparation that goes into any type of meeting I might give. It goes into the preparation I've done in the summertime. That's where that experience or confidence to be able to do that comes from. But I think, especially for a lot of young coaches out there, I was similar. I started at 28. You want to show how much you know, but I
Yeah.
think an underrated skill in coaches is the ability to distill things down to what's most important. That comes from experience.
You referenced a statistic in your closing press conference last year that I thought was fascinating. And it was that your team, from the start of training camp till, the last game of your season, had been together 236 days. And it's obvious in hindsight, but it just struck me as that, what a unique working environment. And this is your job. This is your player's job, relative to most people, and that you're having dinners together, you're on planes together. Like you are literally, I mean, I would say that, not equating to what you do is to, being in war, but probably the military would be one of the only other vocations that you can draw comparisons to. And so, as much as you're in charge of the product on the ice as the leader of that group, how do you create an environment that supports, again, not just athletes performing at a high level, but a group of people coexisting for 236 days together, and getting along and being able to pull the rope together?
Yeah, you know what? I think, I said that for a reason. I count them, right? And I think
That's a long time.
it
Yeah.
is it focuses your brain. Like, that's a lot. That is a long time where you're eating, sleeping, traveling, spending huge amounts of time together. typically more than you spend with your own family, especially for
For
coaches,
sure. Yeah.
um, and trainers and equipment managers and those type of people. So, when something comes to an end like that, it's not easy because you start out with a goal and you want to get better on a day by day basis. What do I think about setting the environment? I think talk is cheap. I think you got to live it. You got to live what your beliefs are. There are moments that occur during the season that um, that you show who you are, and you can talk a good game, but it's about walking the good game too. And I think the job of a coach is to create that environment to get the most out of everybody, not just the players. It's to develop people. It's to create an environment where people feel welcome. Uh, it doesn't mean it's going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Um, you got to work your way through some things. But I think if everybody has the understanding that you're there to help the team and organization achieve an objective, you're there to try and improve and be the best that you can be. I think if I can get people excited about doing that, that's part of my job. If I can create or help create an environment where people feel free to be their best, to feel like it's okay to make a mistake here or there.
Yeah.
I think we're all pursuing our true potential here, and that's what we want to
Totally.
do. And anytime you're involved in team sports, which is what we're involved in here, the reason you're doing it is because you want to be bigger than something than just yourself. You want to be part of a collective. And, I think here in Edmonton, we're blessed with, like we talked about before this interview started, but we're blessed with a unbelievable facility. We're blessed with a ton of resources, an ownership that wants to win, a management that's experienced and has won before. I got great coaches around me. I think the players, are all driven to be the best that they can be. Our leadership group is outstanding. And, it makes me feel very fortunate to be the coach of this team and somebody who adds to that environment.
That's awesome. And you talk a lot about moments throughout a season, and you know maybe not looking back, but looking forward, and how a team or an individual might deal with certain moments throughout a season kind of defines the team's potential. But as you sit here today, what might be examples of some moments that you hope your team encounters throughout the season, in the spirit of setting them up for success come playoff time?
Yeah, that's hard to predict in the future, easier
Yeah,
to reflect back on,
sure.
right?
Well, might have been some examples, and since you've been with the Oilers of moments that.
I think there, as coaches, sometimes there's moments where you have to make hard decisions and sit people out. But the choice to do that reverberates around the room, and it sets an example. I think there are moments to celebrate during the regular season. We had someone get over 150 points last year. We had obviously over three guys that had over 100 points, and the third guy, Ryan Nugent Hopkins, when that happened, that was an opportunity for the group to celebrate somebody who's done something
Yeah.
specific. Could be an equipment manager or medical trainer that hits 1,000 game mark, and you mark those things. You find those moments during the regular season. It's hard to predict what they'll be. I don't know what they'll be. Now, I would also say, as a coach, sometimes you find the teachable moments too,
Yeah.
where maybe an individual or a team or your team took a shortcut, and how you don't want that to become a habit. So you find ways to make sure that you use those moments as well. Either way, a moment it's a moment. How you approach it, whether it's an opportunity to get better or to celebrate something that went right. I think they present themselves during the course and the grind of an 82 game schedule.
So, last year down the stretch in that 82 game season or schedule, you guys went on a bit of a run. I think you were 14-0-1 or 14-1 in your last 15 games. And it's never about any one player. You had a goaltender up for you. You mentioned the players who had big years offensively, but at the trade deadline, you acquire Matthias Ekholm, and there's not a stat sheet for leadership, but obviously he was the captain in Nashville. It seemed like he had a real positive effect on your group. Are you able to articulate what makes him a great leader?
Sure. First of all, there was a lot of work done on that player to make sure the person we were bringing in would fit what our needs were. So, when you're doing that, you're looking at a couple things. One, the player, and then two, the person. On the player side of things, I thought what bringing Matthias in did was it reset the batting order of our back end a little bit.
Yeah.
It allowed, we lost Tyson Berry in the trade. That was part of the cost that we had to pay in order to acquire Matthias. And that's always hard because Tyson did a great job here in Edmonton. Enjoyable guy to be around, enjoyable guy to coach. But that was part of the cost to acquire Ekholm. But when we got Ekholm, and we lost Barry, that allowed Evan Bouchard to move up a little bit on the batting order on the right side. We paired Ekholm and Bouchard together, and they were a dominant pair down that stretch. Yeah. And I think Ekholm was here. I don't know the exact numbers, but it was about 17-3 since Ekholm came in, 14-0-1 down the stretch. But so that trade created a little bit of room for Bouchard, and he blossomed, but also solidified our left side with Ekholm. So there was two benefits of that trade when that happened, which I thought was excellent and speaks to the quality of leader that Matthias Ekholm is that not only is he a good player himself, but he helped bring something out of his defense partner. In terms of his leadership, I think he's somebody who at the time had played the most playoff games for our team. So he has playoff experience.
Yeah.
Comes out of a good program in Nashville where, they played deep in the playoffs a long time. They went to a Stanley Cup final. And he's somebody who brings a level of confidence from those experiences. As a player, he's a big, rangy, great shape. The way he carries himself on the ice, people know when he's on the ice. He can be physical. He blocks shots. There's offense to his game. But I think the leadership side of things really shone through in his effect on Bouchard. And, to a lesser extent, most people don't get to see it because it happens behind closed doors, but his effect on other teammates, just the day-to-day conversation he might have with a guy like Philip Broberg, who's a countryman of his and is trying to find his way in the National Hockey League. He's a first-round pick. He's probably played 60 NHL hockey games. He played a few playoff games here and there, but he's trying to find his way. And the shepherding or stewardship of Ekholm with Broberg, it's immeasurable. So I think adding someone of his playing capability, but also of his personal quality was a huge benefit to the organization. What we really liked about it, it wasn't just a rental. It was somebody that was under contract for a few more years, and we're excited that he's part of our organization.
No, I bet he seemed to just, check all the boxes. So in preparation for this, I mean, hockey's such a small world, Jay. Like I'm looking through this and I'm like, holy shit, Jay played for Steve Spott in junior.
Yeah.
And then I look at all the people that you've crossed paths with, whether it's, the staff you're on in Detroit, you go to San Jose again, you're surrounded by great people. I mean, it just seems like you kind of had this unique opportunity to earn a couple PhDs
Yeah.
in coaching just by the people you've been able to be mentored by as you've gone through your career. And I know you've talked about how you take different things from different people. Has there been a process of maybe cataloging these lessons over time, or maybe how you when you're as some coaches say, you're researching and duplicating? How have you
Yeah.
kind of captured all this? And then I guess once you've done that, then you got to sift through it and say, okay, what's the stuff I'm gonna keep with me when I eventually get the opportunity that you're in now?
Yeah. Well, I would say this, it starts with your family first. I'm blessed to be part of a great family.
Yeah.
I played for some good coaches, guys like Steve Spots. That was Steve's second year of coaching. He started at Seneca College, then he came and coached
Wow.
Tier 2 junior with the Markham Waxers, a proud organization. And but I had known Steve for a long time because he had played at Colgate University with my oldest brother,
Yeah.
Craig, and
Oh, I
so
didn't
I'd
know
known him a
that too.
long time.
Wow.
Yeah, and he so he got into coaching there, and I think after his year with Markham, he went to the OHL out in Plymouth, and then obviously had a great career in Plymouth, Kitchener. Now
Yeah.
he's on his way in the NHL, and just a very good influence. So you pay attention along the way. I played for a guy named Mark Reeds who played and coached in the NHL for a while. I played for Butch Goring. These are types of guys that they leave little impressions on you. I was fortunate, like you said, I got my start in Detroit as the guy on the lowest peg of the ladder in Detroit. But I was in a room with Paul McLean, Tom McClellan, and Mike Babcock. All four of us became head coaches in the
It's
NHL. I'm
crazy.
quite proud of that. I'm
I
quite
bet.
proud
Yeah.
of that. And I think you go from there. You go to San Jose. I'm working with guys of the quality, like Trent Yawney and Larry Robinson and Jim Johnson and Matt Shaw. Todd Richards worked on our staff
Oh
in
yeah.
San Jose. So you're around these types of people. They all leave little impressions on you. And I'm a big journaler. So I'm actually going to show you. I'm going to, for
Oh
all the
man.
young coaches out there, this is my new book right here. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah.
That's my new book this year. That was a habit that started in Detroit. But if I wanted to, I could go back to
And
15, 16, and I keep these
do
with
you
me.
do you really keep them?
I keep them, and I go back and um, I reference things that I was thinking about at that time. I'll go back and look. There's 2010, 11 with the Sharks,
That
and
is so cool.
basically those are little things that I felt were important at my development or for my development at that time. Things I was thinking about, and I always think it's healthy to go back and revisit those because sometimes um, those lessons they hold true. There's a reason they have old sayings and so there's nothing wrong with what we learned in 2015, 16 can apply to things that we're trying to get done here in 2023.
And I just want to paint a picture for everybody that's just listening to the audio on this. Like, Jay didn't just hold up like it's not a magical notebook. Like this is something you can go down to your local Staples and pick up for
Yeah,
$5. Like it's more of the discipline of putting pen to paper and
yeah.
keeping track of what's going on in your season and in your career.
I would say too that a lot of my summertime goes into that book so that as I'm going through my regular season, I can refer to things that I learned in the summertime or I felt were important in the summertime and can always go back to that. And, there's a lot of downtime in coaching too, in terms of waiting for a game to be played. You've had your meetings, there's a couple hours before a game, and sometimes I'll go back and refer to those small lessons that I felt were important in July and August. It's amazing how many times that can be applicable to what you're dealing with in January and February.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Jay, I know you got a busy day. I got two more questions, and the first one is just you mentioned that you read a lot about other coaches. If I made a dinner reservation on your behalf, and there's four seats at the table, you get one of them, and you could invite three other coaches, any generation, any sport. Who are you reaching out to?
Oh, wow. Well, one of them would be someone that I'm proud to call a friend. I think the best coach in the history of hockey is Scotty Bowman. So he's someone that I got to experience a little bit in Detroit,
Yeah.
but something that I really looked up to, and can still pick up the phone and give him a shout. So he's somebody on the hockey side. I think on the football side, I was a really big fan of Chuck Noll with the Pittsburgh
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Steelers. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the 70s Steelers, and really intelligent guys. Read a lot of stuff on him, seen a lot of stuff on him. So he'd be another one. And then if I was going to pick another sport, I'd probably pick basketball. And somebody I've gotten to know a little bit over the years, someone that I think is very good at his job, and has given me some really good advice over time, has been Erik Spoelstra. So
No
that would be my,
way. Wow.
yeah, those three guys would be on my Rushmore. Isn't that what it's called? The
Yeah, I think
Rushmore
it's something like that. Yeah.
of a dinner reservation for sure.
Oh man, you know what? Until you mentioned, I hadn't really drawn the parallels between your career and Eric's, and just yeah, that's
Yeah, well,
fascinating. Great.
I'll tell you a funny story, Aaron. When I was in San Jose one time, I was on the bike, just exercising, and I picked up a copy of ESPN the magazine back
Yeah,
when they had ESPN the magazine, and there was a story on Erik Spoelstra,
I've read that.
and
Yeah.
I thought it was great. And I didn't even know anything about this guy, but I read this story at the time. Ironically, he had worked for Pat Riley, someone else I really liked. And I just challenged one of the people that worked for us in San Jose to see if he could get me this guy's contact information,
No
because I
kidding.
saw a lot of cross parallels in
Yeah.
our commitments. And
Wow.
so I reached out to him. I said, listen, I go, you don't have to reply to this. I just want you to know that I read your story. I have a very similar story. And I drew inspiration from the fact that you were able to not only become an NBA head coach, but to become a really good NBA head coach. And sure enough, the guy responded, and we kept up a little bit of a relationship over the years. And when I came up to the Oilers, he was one of the first people to congratulate me.
Oh man, that is so cool. That is so cool. That's a great. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I
Yeah,
and
no
I think and
problem.
I think and by the way, I think just your career. I think there's if they had your email, your inbox would be flooded with coaches that have drawn inspiration just by like you said, you started at the I say this with the utmost respect. I mean, you started. You're the guy that started in the mailroom and became the CEO, and that's takes a real commitment.
That's a
Um,
compliment.
well,
Thank
that's
you.
good. Good. Um, so, Jay, you are the father of twin girls. My
Yeah.
understanding is aspiring soccer players, and I think that in the last 6 months, we have lived through a tipping point in female sports where you got the NCAA basketball tournament breaks. Viewership records, the Women's World Cup. Just, I mean, the drama and the theater there with sold out stadiums, etc., was unbelievable. And then, of course, Nebraska volleyball breaks the record
Yeah.
for the most spectators at a women's sporting event. I'd just be curious, as a father to two young women, how important is this moment in time that we're living through, and just how it sets up this next generation?
I think it's very important. In our world, obviously, there's a new professional women's league that's
Mm,
going to start up here, I think, in
yeah,
January as well. I think, from I just look at it for the horizon for my children, and it's much different than for the horizon that my wife had. My wife was a great athlete, and so to see that happen over time, I think it's exciting. I think. As you said, my kids are involved in soccer. They're really pumped up about it. Their viewing of the World Cup and me getting to see
Oh,
it through their eyes, it was phenomenal. And I think we're moving in the right direction here.
that's awesome. Well, hey, and I would echo that. I think with your hockey team, you guys are moving in the right direction, and it's I don't want to be biased on this show, but as a Canadian man, it'd be I think once we get into playoff time, the whole country starts rooting for the Canadian teams, and yeah, really looking forward to this year ahead, and really appreciate you taking time out before things get rolling here to join us and share a bit more of your story.
Thanks for having me on, Aaron. I appreciate it.